Look around today's modern workplace. Honestly, it feels like everyone is desperately searching for a shortcut, right? We're constantly bombarded with these flashy stories of overnight successes, naturally gifted prodigies, the folks who just seem to nail it on their very first try. We absolutely celebrate the fast starters and those early sparks of brilliance, but I want to challenge that assumption right out of the gate. If you want to build a career, a leadership profile, or a legacy that actually lasts in a fast-moving, unpredictable world, natural talent is not the ultimate driver. Today, we're diving into the alchemy of consistency and how turning simple, quiet repetition into absolute mastery is the real secret to sustainable success. Which brings us to a harsh but frankly necessary reality check. Why do the most talented people so often fail? Or, why do they just plateau while others completely pass them by? It's because we over-index on the gifted. We idolize the person who learns quickly and shows instant promise. But long-term success? It demands something way less glamorous. It demands stamina. When the landscape shifts, and it always does, right? Raw talent without discipline is incredibly fragile. The people who sustain massive growth over decades are rarely the most naturally talented in the room. They're just the most resilient.
Now, don't get me wrong, talent is a fantastic starting point. It gets attention, it gets you the interview, it creates an opportunity and opens the door. But consistency, that's what compounds the opportunity. It's the quiet, totally unsexy, daily act of showing up that actually keeps that door open. Talent is just a spark, but consistency is the fuel that keeps the fire burning over the long haul.
Let's dive right into Section 1, the myth of motivation. We live in this hustle culture that completely glorifies the grind, right? Emotional inspiration, making big, sweeping declarations about our goals. We think that if we can just find the right motivational quote or catch that perfect emotional high, we're going to crush our tasks. But relying on your emotions to get work done is a highly dangerous game in a fast-changing environment. Look at how this usually plays out. When we start a new project, our initial intensity is through the roof. We push forward because the energy is fresh. But then, inevitably, fading motivation sets in. The excitement dips. And what happens next? A total momentum collapse. It drops to almost zero. The reality is, motivation is temporary. It might start the journey, sure, but when it inevitably fades, your momentum collapses right alongside it if motivation was the only thing keeping you going. Just compare these two operational modes. On one side, you have occasional brilliance. A single massive effort feels amazing, doesn't it? It creates a huge spike in productivity, but it's entirely temporary. On the other side, you have showing up daily. This is about building a rock-solid foundation. Think about it. Someone writing 300 words every single day is absolutely going to outpace the person waiting for the perfect creative energy to write 5,000 words once a month. Brilliance creates spikes. Consistency creates foundations. And in uncertain times, foundations are the only things that last. Let's move on to Section 2, the power of invisible compounding. Think of your growth kind of like a staircase. You can't just leap straight to the top floor. You have to take it one quiet step at a time. This is the power of invisible compounding, where small, seemingly tiny repetitions work quietly over time. Think about it. One workout doesn't transform your body. One thoughtfully written post doesn't instantly build a massive professional brand. And one good meeting definitely doesn't create unbreakable trust with your team. In the moment, these isolated actions seem completely invisible. If you stop after one try, you see zero results. But sustained repetition, it fundamentally changes their scale. Repeated over months and years, these tiny invisible actions compound into undeniable transformations. This compounding effect actually happens in 3 distinct stages. Step 1 is invisible progress. You're putting in the work, but honestly, nothing seems to be happening. Step 2, you develop rhythm and momentum. Showing up daily creates a cadence, and it makes the work way easier to start each day. And finally, we hit Step 3, compounded mastery. Boom. The progress suddenly scales exponentially. The catch here? Early progress rarely looks dramatic, which is exactly why most people quit way too early. They literally stop right before the compounding is about to begin. And that brings us to Section 3, mastering the discipline of boredom. The absolute most vulnerable phase of your journey happens when the fresh ideas dry up. The initial applause fades, and the process just becomes, repetitive. Society tells us that boredom means we're doing something wrong, or that we need to quickly pivot to the next shiny new thing. But listen to me, boredom is not a sign to stop. It's actually a massive green light that you've successfully moved past novelty and entered mastery territory. We need to reframe boredom as the ultimate professional flex.
Staying committed and doing the work without needing constant emotional validation or a round of applause, that is exactly where the real separation between amateurs and pros happens. So I want to pause here for a second and just ask you directly. Can you continue when the excitement fades? I really want you to reflect on your own emotional stability for a moment. When the results are delayed, when you're doing the quiet reps that absolutely nobody sees, do you panic? Do you start looking for an exit strategy? Mastering boredom means looking at that repetitive process and choosing to endure it because you deeply trust the compounding effect that's building beneath the surface. Which perfectly sets up Section 4, building systems over emotions. So how do we actually stop negotiating with ourselves every single morning? It requires a total shift in your approach. Motivation-driven action relies heavily on your mood. If you wake up tired, stressed, or you see an inbox full of urgent fires to put out, motivation instantly fails you. But identity-driven consistency, that relies on systems. The most highly effective professionals reduce friction and protect their progress by leaning on structured routines. They don't wake up and ask, do I feel like doing this today? They just execute the system. They preserve their mental energy for the actual work, not the decision of whether or not to do it. The psychology behind this is incredibly profound. Every repeated action sends a signal to yourself, this is who I am. Consistency isn't just about output or, hitting your productivity metrics. It's about forging an unbreakable identity. When you show up every day, you're building the identity of someone who keeps promises to themselves. And let me tell you, an identity is infinitely stronger and more resilient than a temporary emotion. If you want to build this practically, here is your specific playbook. First, reduce your habit size. Small actions repeated will always beat massive actions abandoned. Second, prioritize rhythm over perfection. Missing once isn't a failure, stopping completely is. Third, track your reps, not your outcomes. Focus purely on the inputs you can control. And fourth, normalize boring progress. Seriously, stop expecting daily fireworks. If you implement these steps, you build a resilient, identity-driven system that completely outlasts any temporary dip in your motivation. Let's wrap up with our final part, Section 5, elevating others through consistency. Because here's the beautiful thing. Your personal discipline doesn't just change you, it fundamentally alters your team dynamics and how you lead others. Building real professional trust requires 3 simple steps. Step 1, you show up repeatedly. Step 2, you deliver steadily. Step 3, you maintain those standards over time, especially when things get chaotic. When you do this quietly and consistently, it builds immense credibility. In leadership and in business, your personal reliability essentially transforms into a trusted reputation. You become the stable force in a fast-moving room that others can literally anchor themselves to. As the saying goes, consistency is the bridge between intention and results. Look, we all have great intentions. We all want to lead well and achieve highly, but consistency is the sturdy bridge that actually gets us there. And being this sturdy bridge doesn't just help you reach your own potential, it creates a stable, completely reliable foundation for your team, your clients, and your colleagues to cross over with you safely. Ultimately, long-term success is about steady execution over occasional brilliance. It's about turning repetition into mastery, building systems that outlast your motivation, and becoming a reliable anchor in a totally unpredictable world. But remember, the absolute highest level of mastery is measured by the outward impact of your discipline. Growth isn't just how far you go, it's how many you take with you. So who are you enabling today?